there are certain songs that just like hit you and remind you of a time. There's something about Club Can't Handle Me by Flo Rida that just like I cry. I cry when I hear that song. I feel you know what I mean? You're like, that's the last song I
Nothing,
imagined.
nothing could have prepared me for that. Hello, 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 y'all. Welcome back to the Freedom Collective podcast. I'm so excited. Thank y'all for all the love and support. The podcast is doing great. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, do all of the things like I've been seeing it, rate, review. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot ask for a better collective. So I thank you again for being part of this collective. And today, I have a really exciting episode because I have a wonderful guest, a fellow clinician, Tara Montazeri. And look, I'm going to let Tara introduce herself because I'm just super excited to have her here. And we're about to double team y'all with the
Yes,
clinicians up in this piece today. I love having other
let's
therapists on here.
go.
I was on Tara's podcast not too long ago,
Yeah.
and this is Tara. I had to bribe Tara, by the way. I was like, if I go on your podcast, can you come on mine, please?
You didn't even have to. I would have asked myself. I would have been like, "And can I be on yours if that's not too much to ask?" But
But yeah,
not at all.
without further ado, before we get into our segments, let me just give Tara the floor. Tara, could you introduce yourself to the
Yay.
people?
Of course. If you hear anything on my mic, I'm just like swatting away this fly that's just happens to be here. So
I hate
that's
that.
my introduction. I'm Tara. Nice to meet everyone who follows along. I'm currently an associate marriage and family therapist, just submitted my hours. So I'm in that study process, hopefully getting licensed this year. I want to think about it and not think about it at the same time. We'll get there when we get there. I have my own podcast, Trust and Thrive, that I've hosted for I over 7 years now, which I started before I even went back to school. So that actually inspired me to go back to school because I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm in my 20s at that time, figuring it out, talking to so many cool individuals, realizing, okay, I love this work. There's so much we can do. It's easy to feel helpless. And then I remembered like even one person kind of talking to other people can make a difference here and there. And I also have an Instagram and TikTok where I post a lot about a variety of topics. It started very much as like boundaries, people pleasing, all that. And then I got diagnosed with OCD. I'm like, a lot of this makes sense now. So let's talk about OCD on both personal and professional sense. And I talk a lot about how it shows up in our relationships. I'm obviously very clear that there's no one size fits all, but I like to remind people you're not alone. If you resonate, I'm like, I feel like I've become the queen of disclaimers. I'm like, okay, you don't always, you don't necessarily have this. Let's not label ourselves so many things. I'm also very clear about the fact that as much as I love this field, I don't want to necessarily kind of slap a label on everything when there's so many ways we've survived and protected ourselves. And so that's me currently. I have a little, I mean, I guess fun part. I have two dogs I absolutely love. They would be shaking right now if they were here under my feet with their collars. So they're outside right now, but we're all good. And I'm so excited to be here. I love Shahem. I love your posts and the work you do.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'm fangirling being here. I'm like, who the hell am I for you to invite me? But thank you.
What? You're the Tara. That's who you are. And thank you so
I'll
much for
take it.
coming.
Of course.
Okay, so actually, let's just get into it. Our first segment is intake, and that is where I ask you just a light question. We got to warm up first, obviously. You're quite familiar as a fellow clinician. My
Yes.
intake question of the day, and we'll both take turns answering, is what's something you've done recently that excited you?
Ooh. I will say I feel very lucky and privileged to have done this because I've done it a few times in my life, but I went skiing with my in-laws and it really made me realize how mental it is. I am the queen of pizza. I'm a beginner and I felt very lucky to have done that, especially, I'm Iranian and seeing well, I mean what's happening in the US, right? As an American, seeing
Yeah.
what's happening in Iran. It just feels like there's a lot of guilt that flows and at the same time showing up in ways we can and doing those things. So I tried to be in that moment and I just kept telling myself, I'm a skier. I'm a skier. I was like about to fall. I was like, and then my poor husband's yelling, make this turn. I was like, I love you, but you need to shush it right now until I'm paused. So that's something that excited me is just kind of doing something that scares me in that moment. And this. Oh my god, this too.
Look,
Yeah.
I hope that you feel comfortable. This is our
I love
space,
it.
but
I
it's
love
so
it.
funny you said skiing because mine is gonna be snow tubing. I went snow tubing in the Poconos, and I shared the similar sentiment the entire time I was there. This is like
Well,
at the peak of when the stuff started happening with ice. I was just like, "Oh my god, like here I am, like on a mountain, on the snow, going down a hill, like having fun, but the world
yeah.
is falling apart." But I think it's so important that speaks to a larger thing where we have to like maintain a sense of joy. And I love when people talk about how joy is part of movement work. We cannot show up and help other people if we're not like experiencing and expressing joy. That's why
Yeah.
artists are so important because they not only capture the moment historically, but they help to create that sense of joy. So, yeah, I went snow tubing. I hate the snow, by the way.
Is it literally like that's the only ice I wanna see, by the way, if I had to, like, be honest. I'm like, "I'll see that,
Okay.
nothing else," right? But the actual is that, like, literally tubing, right? You're kinda just tubing down the snow?
So, like, you know those, like, inner tube thingies? We were, like,
Okay.
this really, really big hill, and everybody would
Ooh,
race down. So, me and my friends, we were racing down. We raced down to the bottom of the
fun.
hill. My friend is such a sore loser if you're watching this, Dawn, because we won, and he
Dawn.
was like,
I love how you're
"No,
like,
because
"I
that
wouldn't
doesn't
bail
count
you
as"
out."
Yeah,
Like, I'm not
I'm
even
gonna
gonna not
use
include his name.
right,
I
I
love
have to
that.
say the name.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Wow, okay. So
Love that.
speaking, let's go into segment two. I think
Yeah.
that's a good segue right there too. This is where we want to get to know you a little bit more. And you can talk about and share anything of importance. It's the journey is the second segment. And I'm just gonna kick it off by asking what made you come into this profession? Like when did mental health start being important to you?
Okay. So I was born in I'm kidding, but I'm, like, in 1995. I will say kind of going back a little bit, 2018, just like something that happened in my family. I'll go back even more. I grew up with three generations. So I grew up with my parents, my brother, and then my mom's parents. My parents and her parents went through the Iranian Revolution, moved in 1979. So they've seen real shit, right? Like they've seen people die in front of them. They've seen military, they've seen all of it in front of their eyes. And so I grew up with a lot of that generational trauma wounds where like we'd be in, a relatively safe neighborhood, but my grandma would put like chairs in front of the door or she would always think something was happening. And at the time I didn't understand the layers of that. So I thought, oh, she's just anxious. And it trickled down in a way. I am very thankful. I grew up with so much love and I've always felt that. And so I make that very, very clear, but I did kind of take on some of that anxiety. In 2018, my grandma did pass, or she did die, and I'm trying to get better at actually just using that word because I realize I kind of steer away from it sometimes to just normalize that experience. My I grew up in that childhood home, so basically the childhood home I'd grown up in, we had to sell. We didn't have to sell, but we were ready to sell. We couldn't live there
Yeah.
without our our mom, our grandma. She was my mom number two. And then over that period of time, I just graduated from college a few years before. Thought I wanted to work. I've always grown up loving music. I was in a cappella in college, and we loved it. Shout out Akasola. It was the best. Always loved singing, very musical family. Well, musical family as in me and my mom. Everyone else would say not us. Basically, I just was like, what do I want to do with my life? What's going on? I thought I wanted to work with advertising. I saw people, no hate to, the company, great experience, but I just remember seeing coworkers like break down over like, we're $100 over budget, things like that that I know impact them. But I was like, I cannot do this. Like I was breaking down over something. And I remember I felt like my role was to ask everyone, how are you doing? Like, it's okay. Like I'd kind of go to everyone and somehow be the support of like, this isn't that serious, girl. Like at the end of the day, we're going to be out of here. You're not going to remember anything or people dying all over the world. Like this $100 will be fine. And then I left that job and basically started. I always laugh about this, but we don't we no shame on what we've done in the past. I started kind of like a health and wellness. I will say it was very toxic positivity. Page is called like Wellness with Tara. And I was like, be thankful that you get to drive to work. And some of the things like that I look back on, I just hold myself accountable and I'm like, you know what? I didn't know. I was very much in that privilege bubble in my own sense. So now I'm like, okay, you know what? It is what it is. But it led me to then really hearing more stories and being more comfortable with my grief and pain and my story and my family's past. And by doing so, I recognize we just can't like slap one label onto everything. And then it turned into Trust and Thrive. I started the podcast thinking like I'm just going to talk about being a lost 20 something year old. And then over time, it basically led to this. So if you go all the way back, I probably have like me quoting myself in the weird fucking way on like a Canva post of like, it's the journey. But you know what? We got here. And I'm like, I'm going to leave it up because we've all no shame and like we all grow and
Yeah.
learn and evolve and like why hide that? So it's been then I went obviously back to grad school during COVID and realized like I want to do this. I'm really stubborn. My parents joke they're like you're such an Aquarius that like you have to want to do something. And I'm like if you tell me I'm going to be I could be a therapist, I'm not going to go and I'm going to wait until I know I want to be a therapist. And so I just like said this is the time, went back and did it, and we're here. Yeah.
Listen, it does work like that sometimes, you know, because I
I'm
told
like,
my story
long
on your podcast. It's like we're very
I
stubborn people that fix signs. We
oh my god. Yeah, you're a Taurus too, so, yeah, you're up
But
there.
yeah, I one thing I'm really happy you mentioned is the grief that happens that we don't understand in epigenetics, truly. Like
Yeah,
mentioning like the OCD and then also your grandmother's experience and how that quite literally I just read this book. It didn't start with us. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it talks about epigenetics. I think that book is so good, but one of the things that he highlights is how your grandmother, like literally the trauma that she experiences is passed down to the mom, which is passed down to the kid. I don't know if this is your
mhm,
maternal grandma or not, but like that trauma really does live in families and is passed down from generation to
yeah.
generation. And one, rest in peace to your grandmother. And
Thank
I
you.
really
We love you,
love your
Auntie Zip.
intentional. I love your intentional use of the language of died and not passed away. Can you explain a little bit more why you say died
Yeah.
as opposed to passed away?
Yeah, and if I'm fully honest, I just did a podcast with a guest on grief, and it made me realize a lot of the words not even just related to death and loss, but a lot of words that I would be too scared to say or I would kind of put and I say this because I think even like my grandma who I love so much would kind of try to keep us from she'd say like let's get ice cream. She didn't want us to be in pain and feel uncomfortable emotions, understandably because for her to survive, she's like, we have to just get through this shit and like get through day to day. We don't have time to even think about that. So I not saying it's necessarily anyone specific, but I kind of took on this belief that I don't want to make other people comfortable. I also have to get through. And part of that was like learning to filter myself. And I recognize why am I not saying the word die? Like it is loss, it is death, it is what it is, right? And it's acknowledging and not also adding this fear and shame around this is something that happens as scary and hard as it is. We
Yeah.
can't avoid it. Yeah.
You know, I find that so many people issues can be traced back to this fear of death
Mhm.
and dying,
Yeah.
but also like our society in general. And I'm sure you tapped into this on your episode is like so afraid of grief. There's such a huge taboo around grief and
Yeah.
grieving that it's even hard to name when people are doing it, right? Even with
Yes.
death, like especially in the Western society, we have like all of 1 to 2 business days to grieve when somebody passes away. See, I just did
Oh
it.
my gosh.
When somebody
Yeah.
dies, we,
It's so default. We don't even realize that's the wild part, right? Yeah.
yeah, like it's so wild. And I think like the better we get at grieving, the more communal, the more adventurous we are with life, the more just accessible humanity is in practice. Because when we don't try to do all of the things to cover up the fact that we need to grieve, life
Mhm.
kind of just moves smoothly. And I tell my clients and stuff all the time, like, grief and the avoidance of it will slow you down a lot in life. If you
Oh, yeah.
avoid grieving the things you need to grieve, your life is going to slow down. And you put so many, because you're avoiding the pain
Mhm.
that's underneath. I think we all need
Yeah.
to be more honest about that. I'm so
No, I
curious
hear
too.
that.
Like, I'm all up in your business.
Yeah,
Feel
please.
free not to share.
I'm
But
crashing out on my social media every 2 days, so, like, this to me is, like, light work. I'm like, we're surface level right now. What do you
but I
say?
I want to hear a little bit more because a lot of people have OCD
Mhm.
and it go undiagnosed, especially like black and brown people, like people who are more marginalized because, we and when we come from cultures that aren't catered to, I should say, by the Western mental health like complex or industrial
Yeah.
complex, we have a harder time recognizing and understanding when OCD and anxiety disorders pop up in our communities. What is your journey with OCD? When did you realize like you had it? Like what were the symptoms and signs, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yes. Oh, 100%. And so for me, I will say when I got diagnosed, I had another moment of grief where I recognized, oh, all those little, what I thought in quotes, quirks as a kid, and those moments I thought were just personality traits were related to OCD, right? And I'm always interested in learning more about like the connection to kind of growing up with needing to be in control or complex trauma. And that's a whole other conversation. But for me, I remember the reason I really was like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on is because it started to impact my relationship. It was different
Yeah.
when it just impacted me. And I had a lot of also mental compulsion. So I did have compulsions of like, oh, Tara's just the girl who likes to apply deodorant on every like 20 minutes. Where at that point, I'm like, that doesn't, like, it wasn't hurting anyone. So it wasn't something that I felt like needed to be explored. Or well, like there was a point where kind of related to the fear vomit, but similar to OCD, where I couldn't watch like the idea of being in any area where like, okay, are they going to vomit on the screen or this and that was too much for me. And, even like little contamination stuff. But then I would spiral and I would constantly be ruminating and thinking about things. And I just thought, I really care. And like, I'm just a really reflective person, but like, it's consuming me and I didn't understand. And so then I remember when it would affect I've been with my partner for like 10 years now. And when we were dating, early 20s too at the time, I didn't understand like, there's no specific thing. And I just constantly was on a loop of like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I need to get out. It was a panic, urgent feeling. And I just constantly felt this feeling. And he just happened to be someone who was a big part of my life. So it was almost like an equation where I'm like, okay, has to be him. If like I'm feeling like something's wrong. I know that sounds awful, right? And like, poor guy. Shout out to him. Like, we're in such a better place, thankfully. And like, we always were, but I really kind of took him on that ride with me for a minute. And he's like, I always joke, I'm like, he's too like more secure for his own good where I'm like you're so secure, I'm like I can't comprehend it. And so I at that point I then eventually I did go to see therapists, but it was always anxiety, right? Because it's like
Mm,
okay, you're just anxious. And when they knew my history they're like okay, maybe these family members are anxious and went through this and all of that. And then I realized, oh, like I have been kind of doing compulsions my whole life. Oh, that makes sense that I would panic at the time and think like the universe, God, don't hurt my family. Or like, I would think, oh, I was responsible for these events. Or if I didn't do this, it was because of this. And the responsibility and constant guilt. I constantly felt guilty and I was so confused as to why because it felt like
yeah.
I was responsible for so many things. So yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much there, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to be that person.
Please.
Imperialism,
Mhm. Literally though.
colonization, imperialism, it really does impact people on a global scale
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about, like you saying your grandmother was putting chairs out and your grandmother was anxious because she went through the Iranian Revolution and how that like just really does impact generations of people.
Yeah.
Imperialism, colonization, all of the
All of it.
woes of Western ills really does fuck people up, and it's so sad, and that's
Yeah.
why, I really do respect and appreciate what you're doing because I think, like, even, like, the podcasting one, I'm so child, 7 years, you are goals for me, like, but,
I'm like, "Don't listen to the first 6 years," but that's okay.
seriously though, I genuinely think, like, what we do, like, clinicians like you, like myself, like, we are challenging like colonial like therapy. We are
Mhm.
decolonizing therapy. Also, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like decolonizing therapy, the
Yeah,
page in the
of
book.
course. Love the book. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
amazing. And I think it's just like a roadmap for us to challenge these
Mm.
things when you are dealing with like these blanketed things. Like you cannot address OCD and often anxiety that runs
Yeah.
in generations of family without addressing imperialism,
Yes.
colonization, the way that certain countries like this
Yes.
one like terrorizes other ones. Like, I think you can't address the
Hug.
micro without addressing the macro. It's just literally they're so interwoven. And again, shouts out to your grandmother and
Yeah.
rest in peace to her. But it's just like, wow, like those two connections, it's just so wild to me. And I really love in the book, It Didn't Start With Us, how
Mhm.
he really goes into examples. I don't know how long ago you read the book.
Yeah.
I'm like the type of person when I read
Like,
a
over
book,
5 years ago, that's why I'm
right?
like, I remember it, but, like, I probably need to
Yeah.
reread. Yeah.
I'm like the type of person who's always like, if I read a book, it's like just burning in my head to just talk
That's so
about it.
impressive. Yeah.
I love how he goes into because he used in the book one example about the Holocaust and how
Mhm.
a person was experiencing suicidal ideation many years after their loved one had passed away. Sorry, I did it
No,
again.
it's okay. By the way, I'm not like the police, like,
No,
you
no,
gotta
no, no. It's
say
I want to challenge myself too.
I
Long
appreciate it.
after their
You
loved
noticed
one
it.
died, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we gotta peep that.
Yeah.
Oof. I'm telling it's the same thing with, like, commit suicide. I don't say that, but it
No,
took
100%.
many years to, like, unlearn that because it's like,
Yeah.
you are
That's what we were taught.
criminalizing suicidal ideation in a world that, frankly, makes people wanna kill themselves.
Exactly,
That ain't
exactly. Just, like,
fair.
pathologizing everything in
Exactly.
general. Yeah, I hear that.
Exactly. Um, but in the book, he used the example of the Holocaust and someone experiencing ideation many years after their loved one passed away, a loved one they didn't even meet, and
Yeah.
how that is just so deeply ingrained in us, like, the pain and suffering that our families, generations of our families go through. And it really does remind me a lot of what's going on right now in the world, of course. And I know you think about this too, because we started off before we started recording talking about it. Like, it is really challenging because part of why the fucked up shit that the government is doing to its own citizens and to immigrants is that that will have generational impact. And I don't even just think about what's happening in the current. I think about how that's going to impact
Yeah,
generations in the future. And it's just also fucked. But
I hear you.
yeah, yeah,
I was gonna say even, like, we're obviously advocating for people to come home, and I think of, like, that kid Liam, I'm like, "I'm so glad he's home."
yeah,
This is gonna stick with him for the rest of his life. Like, this
yeah.
won't go away. This isn't like, "Okay, now he's home and he's good." You can't undo what's been done in that way, and for everyone seeing that, and it's just yeah, it's unbelievable and tragic, but unfortunately believable because that's just the also world we live in.
Unfortunately, very
Yeah.
believable. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
I was
lie.
gonna say I said unbelievable, and I'm like, at the same time, not really. It is what
Yeah,
it is, unfortunately. Yeah.
yeah. Navigating it as a therapist, I have to say, is
Yeah.
really. Let me ask you. This is
Yeah.
my ask. Like,
I'm
I'm
also curious about
asking
you.
Tara, not Dr. Durag, because I don't know.
No, I
I
love to hear.
I found for me it's been super challenging waking up every day and trying to help people cope with the reality of all of the systemic issues that we're institutional issues that we're facing as a society. uh it's hard, and
Yeah.
sometimes I don't got the answers. I don't even think any of
Yeah,
us have the answers,
I was gonna
but
say,
yeah,
point me in a
I think
direction that does. I'm like, "Who does?"
I'm asking you for the answers, and then
I
it's
was
like
like,
I don't think any of us.
"Oh god." Yeah.
Yeah, how have you
Oh,
been
you're oh, so you're
coping? Yeah.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
like,
it's like
how are you doing it?
it's a mix. I'll say one thing before I get into that is I have a whole different layer because I remember like I used to see someone like my grandma, who, by the way, let me acknowledge, was the most grateful human being you could meet. She was always just like grateful for family and praise God and gratitude and all the like. She just could not have more gratitude for the life she lived, and just seeing things behind a screen. I'm like, what we're taking on versus even like living it. There's a whole different layer of gratitude I feel, and just understanding and empathy for people who've been through it directly, right? And so as a clinician, I am very open. Like, one thing I obviously talk about OCD, and I kind of put a name to it to normalize people's experience, but I try to really depathologize. Oh my god, I can't say the word. I'm
Deep
over
path.
a path.
We
You
know
know
what
what
you
I mean.
mean.
You know what I mean. You know when there's certain words you're like, my mouth just can't say it. But get over like the idea that something's wrong with you for experiencing this, which a lot of clients and people online, obviously, they come in and think like, yeah, I just need to like cope better. And I know you've seen that too. It's like no one was meant to cope with what's going on, right? If anything, as human beings, first of
Oh
all,
my
even just on
god,
our
thank you for
phones, like
saying that.
it is not normal to see someone selling something and 2 seconds later you see graphic image of a child and then someone dying. It's just a lot for us as human beings. And so I really try to normalize that and then also take that myself, because I used to like go on TikTok and be like, let me edit this video till 10 p.m. And then I'd see other videos and I'd fall down a rabbit hole. What happened to this family? What's going on? Is everyone okay? What's happening here? And trying to, I don't even want to use the word balance because that's so, it makes it sound so simple, but trying to really check in with my body as well, because I have a tendency to go black, be very black and white with things, and I can kind of connect that a little bit back to some OCD stuff as well. But I will think if I don't know every single detail about something, I'm not as informed or I'm not there. And I also, there's that extra layer of like, okay, girl, don't do this. This is not for you and your own pride and to feel good about yourself. Like, if you actually want to show up for people, you do have to take care of yourself, even if that's
Yeah,
uncomfortable. And it's not
yeah.
either or. And it's so yeah, basically like really prioritizing. I'm gonna stay informed and show up. But like if I don't recharge, I will no one can function in this world if
Yeah.
we don't take care of ourselves. This isn't we're not meant for this.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
yes. I think I mentioned this on your show too, but that all saying like we have to take care of ourselves in order to show up always reminds me that you cannot show up and be a good community member if you're not willing to be helped. And I just
Yeah.
like, I couldn't agree with or underscore that point anymore. You brought up something a little earlier though that I want to double back to around
Hmm.
like your first stint with toxic positivity. And I
Yeah.
think that's important to talk.
Please do. I love this. It's so good. Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to talk about and discuss too,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are disillusioned when that toxic positivity bubble burst. And a lot of people
Yeah.
think like the way to get through hardship is to pretend hardship isn't happening. And it also reminds me of
Mhm.
spiritual bypassing, where
Yes.
people will avoid grief and grieving because
Mhm.
they need to, they think avoiding the negative emotions is the way to actually
Yeah.
resolve the negative emotions, and that's
Mhm.
just not the case. I want to hear a little bit more about this toxic
Yes,
positivity.
please. I I think it's the perfect example of I was putting out into the world what I was experiencing, and it was very real time of I was going through. This was like I've lived with my grandma my whole life. So not to compare, right? But like I wasn't seeing her once a year, and it doesn't make a difference of whether or not that's the case. It can hurt just as much. It can hurt just as much to see a celebrity or someone you've known die, right? And so I remember deeply feeling that grief, but I didn't know where to put it and I didn't know what to do with it. And it's almost like I felt like, okay, let's try to. I did grieve in my own way, but it did turn into like, okay, everything's okay. It was like, imagine I'm like smiling, like, everything's okay. And I'm like, I'm trying to not cry and get through it. And I also felt like I grew up very much wanting to make sure everyone around me was okay, which that's a whole other story. So a lot of the messaging was, I wanna say, authentic for the moment I was in, It wasn't once I really went through the pain and sat with that, it also helped me. It's layered, right? If I couldn't feel that own grief within my family, I couldn't see it in the world. I couldn't see it in other communities. It's not that I didn't see it, but I couldn't feel it on that impact and really understand it unless I let myself even go through that, like you said, kind of micro internal in my
Yeah,
own family system, go through that experience. I'm like, if I can't experience that in my family system, how in the world am I going to really sit with it and work through it and support other people on a macro level? And so it really took a lot of, looking within, holding myself accountable, recognizing that I also did what I knew the best that I knew at the time. Because I also know, like, my grandma, she'd be like, "You're good, you're good." Like, knowing her, she'd be like, "Don't even, you're chilling, girl. Like, I'm good, you know." But I knew, like, I'm feeling this, and it's not scary. It can be uncomfortable, but I got through it, and I love I don't want to say I love pain, but I love sitting with my feelings now of
yeah,
being able to say, like, that's what life is. Like, that's what community and connection is. I wouldn't go online and I can't even fathom people who are like, at least this, at least that. Oh, at least this kid's home. It's like, I understand. We can celebrate some of the good news and the joy, and that's important. And we have to recognize, like, this shit's not okay as normalized as
yeah.
it has been. Right. And so, kind of like, I had to do that first.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that. My goodness. I
Yeah.
remember a stage in my life where I had a really hard time with grieving. And you know what?
Yeah.
I look, some people don't understand that this is just not an innate thing. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, because of the way society and the stigmas and all of that works, I don't think a lot of people are taught the tools to how to grieve. Like there's a method, at least for me,
Yeah.
where it's like you just need to understand grief first. And then after you understand grief, the tools that you need in order to grieve, the things that you need access to in order to grieve. And I think I don't know what models you follow, but I'm old school in the sense that I really like the Kubler-Ross model of
Love
grief,
it.
just like the 5 stages, keeping it
Yeah.
simple. That
Yeah.
for the listeners is anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Very simplistic model, but I think it really covers some of the basics. I talk about this
Yeah.
ad nauseum a lot, but understanding what happens in those stages of grief and what function that these stages of grief offer is super important. I literally was just walking a client of mine through this. They know any client of mine who's probably listening, they know I will be quick to say, and what stage of grief would that be coming up in? But grief, understanding it is so important. Like anger makes so much sense. And anger is
Mhm.
valid and righteous, and you should be
I
fucking
love
angry.
anger.
Be angry, but you will have to eventually come to a place where you can understand and process what's underneath of that anger, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bargaining even makes sense, right? You're trying to make sense of what happened before. Like if only I did this. If I wish I called my grandma more. I wish I had one more opportunity. Maybe if I showed up in this way, this wouldn't have happened. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
And you eventually have to like reckon with the reality that the past can't be changed and
Mhm.
forward is where you need to go. Depression makes sense. I'm just breaking down all the
Yes.
stages at this
No,
point.
I love it.
Depression
I'm like, I love the reminders, and it's so true, yeah. It all
depression
makes
makes
sense.
sense. When you are aware that something, someone that you love is gone, it's okay for
Yeah.
you to feel sad, to feel like sometimes it might be a little hopeless. And then eventually
Mhm.
you do have to recognize there is a future beyond like loss. And it is a part of human nature to grieve. And it's okay. You can walk with and honor the things that you've lost. You can have a future outside of loss. Even denial is like it makes sense. Sometimes we need to protect ourselves because sometimes we don't have
Yeah,
the capacity, sometimes we
of
don't have
course.
the access, the information in order to grieve properly. It's not shaming yourself to
Yeah.
any one of those stages is not going to help you whatsoever. It's human.
Yes, I love that, and just the fact that you brought up not shaming ourselves, that's why, like, I laugh talking about how I process things, but I don't shame myself for it because that's what I knew to do at the time. And I used to think anger, especially growing up culturally as at the time a girl, right? Like not even a woman yet in the household and kind of those expectations was very different, even if it was welcomed. I grew up with a mom who was very open about like, let's feel your emotions and go on a drive. Like I'd fail a test and
That's
she's like,
beautiful.
congratulations. Like she's like, okay, you did it. Like you're good. And a grandpa who also was like, if you know Rumi, he like translates kind of Rumi and Farsi to English and he does a lot of work. He's a writer in his 90s. He still writes and speaks. Like he's a very spiritual man too. And so I grew up with a lot of that, which I feel thankful for. And at the same time, I just didn't think I was allowed to go there. And I thought it was this really scary place to feel that anger, to feel all this. And so, yeah, I protected myself at the time with let's get through it and smile. And we live in a world where we're told, okay, are you better after the few stages? Are you better after a few days and the funeral's over? Okay, life
My
moves on. And
goodness.
as if like hasn't it been like a few months? I watched really quick tangent watching the Princess Diaries and the friend was like, didn't your dad die like 2 months ago? I thought you'd be over it. First of all, like what a bitch. Second of all, when I was a kid, I didn't realize like that I'm like, oh my
That's
gosh, I think when I was a
2
kid, I remember
months.
thinking it sounded like 5 years. I'm like, she said like 2 months or something, which is wild.
That's
But all to
ridiculous.
say, yeah, it's being able to tap into that part of my life has really helped me. Like, it's almost like I imagine something was stuck there. I wasn't able to even understand I want to be a therapist and do all these things because when you, like you said, you don't let yourself feel that grief and pain, it doesn't go away. It just like clouds all the parts of you that like want to be explored and are just stuck behind it. So it really has helped me in my everyday life. I cry and I grieve a lot of things big and small day to day
Yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know who I really admire for their work around, like, grief and grieving? Are you familiar with Pete Walker? I, like, never like to assume what people have read or who people, like, are tapped into.
I will say the name out of all the people you said sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. I probably
So
might get off and be like,
yeah.
okay, I know who they are, but not sure.
Pete Walker is the author of Complex PTSD from Surviving to
Okay.
Thriving. Like,
Okay. Yes.
and in it, he
Yes.
talks about how in order to grieve, like not the stages, right? But in order to
Yeah.
grieve, there are four components of grieving. First, though, before you even get to the components, it's important for you have to feel your feelings. That's the number one
Hmm.
thing. And I don't think everybody has been taught how to feel their feelings. A lot of people think that
Yeah.
it's something that's innate, again, but you have to learn and practice that. Like one of the things I do before I gear up to do EMDR with my clients is I make sure I'm like a drill sergeant. You have to
Yeah.
know how to feel your feelings. And I give them
I
this
love it.
really extensive list of feelings and this
Hmm.
homework where, you know what, if collective, if you're listening and you want this list, I
Love
will
it.
definitely post it, but
Yeah.
a list of like these feelings and the sensations in the body, and I make them do an exercise throughout the week. So it's like, okay, find the feeling that you're feeling, the strongest feeling
Mhm.
you had that day, connected to a body sensation that you're having. Doing body scans, it's something that you
We
have to
love a body
practice.
scan.
I love a body scan down.
We love a body scan. My clients are like, "Girl, we've done enough body scans.
Do it again.
Do it again. We're not thinking your feelings, we're feeling your
Right.
feelings."
3 more times.
3
But
more
no, like,
times.
the body scans, using that to get in tune with your feelings and where you're feeling them in your body, it's essential to any trauma work, any grief work, and when I get them to do that after they learn how to feel their feelings, that's when they can get to the 4 components and EMDR, and those components
Yeah.
are self-compassion. Again, you have to be compassionate with yourself throughout the grieving process. There's no way to grieve when you're beating up on yourself the whole time.
Yeah.
Angering. He talks about angering in the book, which I really love. Like, there is a necessity for anger. Anger is something that people are shamed out of a lot, too, I notice, especially women. Especially women. And I think when people lean into the anger and feeling the frustration and just being pissed off at
Yeah.
life sometimes, it really does help for the other ones too. So it's self compassion, angering, crying, letting your body do the natural release that it needs to. A lot of people,
Love
have
it.
you ever worked with somebody who's like, I haven't cried in 7 years?
Oh,
I'm always
and
like,
I'm like, We're ready to go. Let me cook. I'm ready. I'm like, it might take some time. No rush. We're gonna meet you where you're at. But yep,
Challenge
yep.
accepted.
We're like, I have everything together. I think my way out of things. I'm like, okay, no big deal.
My God. Okay, I'm gonna do the last one, and then I'll bring up the
Yeah.
thing that, like, oh my goodness. It's angering, self-compassion. Oh, verbal ventilation is the last one, where you
Mm,
have to talk with people you feel safe with, people who you trust. That's like one of the benefits of a therapeutic relationship. You can
yeah.
trust most times, because some therapists do be wilding, but you can trust most clinicians to be
That's its
ethical
own
and creating,
podcast.
right? It's a whole show. But most therapists should be able to be trusted with, like, your softness, your vulnerability. But
Yeah.
one thing that really, because I'm glad you said that, one thing that
Yeah.
really makes me cackle every time is when people are like, yeah, I had a therapist and they said that, like, I'm perfect because I can think through my problems. Like, and
Yep.
I feel
I've been that
miserable.
client.
Right.
I've been that
Everything's
client. I'm
going to
like,
shit.
I know what's going on. So you can't really
Yeah.
tell me anything new. And then I'm like, oh, but I
Right.
haven't
I'm
cried in a
so
year. So
self-aware. I'm so
yeah, I'm
self-aware.
so
It's
self
like,
aware.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
But I've heard, like, people say, like, yeah, my therapist said I'm too self-aware, so there's nothing they can do with me. That therapist sucks because
Yeah.
there's no such thing. That is so wild to me. Yeah, I'm just self-aware. I just am having all these symptoms like anxiety.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get up in the mornings, but I'm so self-aware and therefore therapy won't work for me. That couldn't be any further from the
It's
truth.
the worst. It's also
Goodness
so
gracious.
common with OCD too, where it's like, okay, so then let's kind of like therapists don't realize sometimes that they're just, and I'll have to like recognize myself and kind of interrupt it. Like, oh, we're ruminating together now. Like we're actually
Mm,
not supporting you. Like we're keeping you just stuck in here and you're in a loop.
exactly.
Versus like, time for the body scan. Prepare to be sick of me, but we're gonna do it. Like, you know, we're gonna do it
That body
anyway.
scan will do it every time. I'm telling you,
Yes.
get in touch with your body. We're not gonna, like, I run
Can't
a
go
strict
wrong.
program over here. You two up
I
in
love
the
it.
head. Yeah.
I am
No,
curious.
but
I have a quick question for you, if that's okay. Just
of
because, like,
course.
being online, social media, do you ever, like, just kind of thinking about different therapists, obviously, not like judging or shaming anyone specific at all, but do you ever see posts of clients saying, my therapist did this and they were the worst? And maybe it's me and maybe it's my OCD showing up, but sometimes I think, are they about to either say something I've done? Or is this like a client I have and I just don't remember? Like, am I about to just be called out for like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Even I have that anxious thought where it's like, okay,
Oh,
hopefully,
did I
but
say
then I'm like,
that?
this is, yeah, okay, all the
Yeah.
time. And I think being a therapist, like, the job itself is just so, it can be challenging in the sense that we really don't get roadmaps. I think a lot of people think when we're in
Yeah.
school that we're taught, like, how to show up in session and stuff. That's like, couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of the stuff that therapists have to learn is like outside in the field. So
Yes.
yeah.
And in
So
day-to-day
it's,
life, like, they're like, "Here's
yes.
some like, 1 week on multicultural or whatever." I'm like, "That what?" Like, as if, like, that could just kind of describe life and the world we live in, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but that's why
the
I
work
think
always happens.
the best therapists are forever students. Like, I always
Yes.
consider myself a forever student for that
Mhm.
reason, because we have to stay up on
100%.
it, especially when we're challenging these systems. We got to know the
Yeah.
systems that we're interacting with and engaging in. So definitely that. But
Mhm.
yeah,
No, I hear that.
yeah, my goodness, I do get that thought though. I'll be like, oh my god, am I? Sometimes I'll see somebody talking and I'll be like, "Are they about to say my name?" Knowing damn well that's never been a client of mine, like, ever.
All the time, and I feel like in Not So Raven, like, my eyes kinda go like this where I, like, try to then think back. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, has this happened?" Or, "Is this a moment?" But no,
Oh
it's
my
a
god, but
world. It's a world on there.
some therapists are actually, and it's no shade, some therapists are actually awful. There's this one therapist who reads off the reports to the board. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever come across her videos, but she'll read off, like, therapists who have been reported and what they've been reported for and
Oh, I've
what the
heard of
conclusion
her. I might
was.
have seen
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
It'll be for, like, wild stuff. It was one where a therapist took their client who was in recovery to a party and did drugs with the client, and I was just like, That's really
I
wild. I still ask if I can eat in session if, like, I
no,
need a quick nibble, like, so I don't even, like
literally.
how are y'all
I'm
getting to
over
that
here like
point?
I'm over here worried of like, what if my Wi-Fi goes off a little bit? I'm the scum of the earth. I'm like, what on earth? Like all these things I'm
We
out of
have
control over.
yeah, very
Yeah.
different therapists out
Yeah.
here. I also think that therapists should specialize, though, for the reasons we were just talking about,
Mhm.
where it's like that whole, "Oh, you're self-aware, so I don't know what I can do with you." I don't think therapists are okay, this is controversial.
No,
I'll
I
take
love I
this.
love controversial.
Don't jump Tara for this. I said it, so don't come for Tara, come for me. But
Unless I agree, then go ahead.
I do think that therapists are pretty useless if they hyperfixate on the CBT triangle. Not that CBT is not useful.
For me too. Come for me too. I stand by that. I love CBC when needed.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of goes. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm interrupting
no, no, no,
your
no, no,
whole
no.
statement.
I please all the feedback, interruption, do your thing because it is it's a fixation at a certain point where it's like, please,
Mhm.
everybody, I'm begging you. You cannot
Yeah.
keep telling a person that they just need to think their way out of an issue. And I think it like kind of strips people away oftentimes from, again, the global
Mhm.
issues, the
Yeah.
community issues, the like macro, meso, and micro that is happening
Mhm.
simultaneously. And plus, like certain people just need different things. Like it's just not a so
I
yes,
I respectfully, we think that's if anyone thinks that's beyond controversial, I'm like, do what I had to do in 18 and be like, let's look ourselves in the mirror and recognize that like we've learned things. It's okay. We can have compassion. No shame if we think that's the one way to go. All I'm hearing you say, honestly, is that there's no one size fits all, that
yeah,
we have to see every client as a human being, not just as a client or patient or someone who we could just slap something on. And I'm sure
exactly,
you feel that with sessions too. Like we can come into a session, be like, this is where we're going to go. And we go the exact opposite way. It isn't, we can't go with our
exactly,
own intention of wanting to do. It isn't about us. We have to meet
yeah,
clients where they're at. Sometimes CBT won't work. Let's reframe the fact that your family, was deported and think of how that can actually benefit you.
Jesus
Let's
Christ,
focus on the positive and all that, as opposed to like let's just sit with the fact that that fucking sucks. It's
yeah,
in your body and like there's nothing I can do or say. There's nothing to make it better, and let's sit with that. So no, I completely agree.
yeah. Okay, good. I
Yeah.
won't get jumped alone.
No. You're
Last
good.
point,
A girl,
and then we
I just called you girls.
no, you're good.
like I'm like, girl, I get all these hate comment DMs anyway of like, I sneeze this. I'm like, okay, go off. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, I could just delete this message. I actually
right.
don't have to
Get it
let it
out your
sit
system,
in
baby.
the
Like
DMs.
I
Get
have
it out
people
with the lack of
mad
eye
on like
contact. Do your thing.
you'll be fine.
Chicken fingers 325.
Okay, last point, and then I'll we can go into our next segment. But like, I really think, and I want your feedback on this too. And I don't think it's shocking that you were in an a cappella group, because I think creative therapists are the best therapists.
Yeah.
People, therapists who are creators, like, and I mean, I'm not
Hmm.
talking about like internet like creators that too, but like, I mean, who indulge in creative stuff like are better suited to be therapists because it helps with
Hmm.
interventions when you have to intervene and support a person that requires a lot of creativity. Like a lot of therapists go into like the one size fits
100%.
all thing, and it's just that's just not how it works. So the more
No.
creative a therapist, the better,
I love
in
it. And
my
I'm seeing
opinion.
did you paint that by the way behind you?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
did.
I'm like, see, it's beautiful. I
Thank
love it.
you.
And it's so interesting. I feel like I've talked to so many therapists who, not all, right? But many who were like, oh, yeah, I was, into music or I was an actor or I still am. And it's so fast. I love that. Also, like, very fun. We can incorporate it into our work. I'm like, I used to like
Yeah,
make Miley Cyrus music videos on my own. So, like, now I just post about OCD.
now
Same,
I
same
need you
with
to I need
editing.
to see one of those videos
I just
actually.
don't have the Hannah Montana wig on, but, or the avatar look on, but the same thing.
Same
I'll be finding it. Don't worry. I'll be digging it if she has her 20-year anniversary. I will be finding that footage to say
I am looking
I
forward to
was
the
there.
20-year Miley Cyrus Hannah Montana anniversary.
I'm like,
Okay, that's
don't
a little
fight me
tangent.
respectfully. I will be there wherever it is. I will make it work.
I love me
Yeah,
some Hannah Montana now, okay?
the
Um,
best.
okay, so our next segment is Ask Dr. Durag and Friends,
Ooh,
and I'm so excited to have you here for this because I think this requires, like, a little bit of a clinical take.
okay.
It doesn't and it does,
I'm ready.
but
Like, don't be worried.
the question for today from the collective itself is what steps would you take for a people pleaser to become more assertive of their own needs?
Ooh,
Do you want
ooh,
to go
ooh,
first? Or
ooh.
you want me to?
Happy to go. If
Please.
because something does come to mind is that I worked on is do it despite the guilt, do it despite feeling like shit, doing despite thinking you're an awful person. And I say that because it's not confirming those things are true. But for me, I've like started to compare showing up for yourself. And obviously, I'm always like giving disclaimers of like, you're not like a full on asshole who's not caring for other people. Still be the villager in the village. But in general, if you're prone to being a people pleaser, anything that involves taking care of yourself is going to feel so extreme. Even if it's a
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm not, you're going to feel like the worst person exists. So I've kind of started to reframe it as that it's basically trying a new workout. So if you feel that guilt after acknowledging and doing something for yourself in that way or setting that boundary, whatever it looks like, it's just you being sore. So it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm injured or it's wrong. It will feel like the end of the world, but do it anyway. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, like including myself, we wait until like, I want to feel confident in this. Like, how can I feel confident in this? How can I do it and not feel guilty? I'm going to say this now, you're going to feel guilty in the
Yeah.
beginning if you're not used to it. And just accept it. It sucks. It's uncomfortable. Like, kind of build your toolkit for what you can do to support yourself and that kind of aftercare if you do feel that. But you're not doing anything wrong if you feel that guilt, especially for people pleasers. This isn't for people who just like do not care about anyone and who are like, I feel
You
guilty
should
because I
feel guilt.
yeah, I was like, some people could use that guilt, but this is obviously for the people pleasers who are just think anything they do. And I'll say this, I've really learned, and I acknowledge it, a friend to all is a friend to none, respectfully, because
Right.
I realize like if I'm trying to make sure everyone's okay, I'm going to hurt someone. And it's also like you're not really standing for much. And it's not to shame anyone, it's to remember there actually is community when you kind of do stand for something, whether it's on a macro, micro level, or even if it's within your family. You may not feel that community wherever it is, but you will find people who get it. And so don't be scared to think like, I got this guilt, I'm going to be alone and isolated. You will find that community. And
Wow.
it's so like refreshing to just be like, okay, this is hard and painful, but other people go through it too.
Wow. What
Yeah.
an amazing that's your answer. How can I
No,
follow that? That was you hit the nail on the head.
no,
My
it's
goodness.
all personal experience. I won't even lie. I'm just like speaking from what I've learned
I
myself.
I definitely love that you brought up the guilt because I always tell people, you choose one, guilt or resentment. You gotta choose one. Like
Yeah.
I would
Oh,
rather
I'm glad you
process
said that.
guilt than resentment because I always say
Yeah.
resentment is the great eroder. It erodes away at any relationship it touches if it's not addressed. So I would rather
Yeah.
feel guilty for telling somebody that I love and care for no than I would like resenting them later for them not for me doing something that I didn't want to do or have the capacity to do.
100%.
But the only thing I'll add to that, because my God, that was
Mm.
beautiful, is I like to warn people pleasers to get ready
Mhm.
for the great shed. I call it the shed because you will eventually shed some people if you have people in your lives who are accustomed to you having no boundaries. There will come a
Mhm.
time where you will have to get comfortable with the idea of grief and grieving. So if I had to
Yeah.
really get started at a specific step, it would be getting comfortable with the grieving process because it's going to be happening, but you will
Yeah.
be better for it in the long term because people who love you, people who support you and care about you are not going to leave
Yeah.
you just because you have boundaries. In fact, they'll respect you more. So
Yes.
that's my advice to the
I
people pleasers.
Can I add to that just because that made me think of something else?
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think there's a layer that can come with that of being okay. We've talked about like how comfortable grief is. There is grief in that too. I used to think like, how did they not know? And oh my gosh,
Mhm.
recognizing So I played a role in this. I don't need to shame myself because, being in that people pleaser role actually helped me a lot in my life to get through certain things, right? But to acknowledge like, oh, I was in that. I played a role in that and I'm also grieving that relationship what I thought it was. It may not work anymore and so it's so multi-layered and it's
Yeah.
not so simple. And yeah, just want to hold space for that as
No,
well.
seriously. And the
Yeah.
shame, oh my God, you cannot shame your way out of these patterns and
No.
habits, y'all. You can't do it.
No.
Let me also say this because I have another clinician
Yeah.
here, so I can get dragged in person if you want to drag me. Do you know I got jumped on the internet a couple of years ago because I said people pleasing is a manipulative behavior? And
I'm sorry, there are worse things to worry about, and, also, critical thinking. You don't have to, fully agree or believe something or just be open to it, right?
yeah.
For example, I so get that. I'm not saying everyone who does that is manipulative, but I can understand the
So
intention behind that, and I've felt that myself, yeah.
I even want to just couch it with this, right? Because I explained it
Mhm.
as many ways as I could. I don't think people
Yeah.
pleasers themselves are manipulative,
Yeah.
or malicious people. I just believe the behavior of not being transparent in a relationship robs people of the opportunity to get to know a real person because they are not given the opportunity to meet you
Mhm.
where you are. You don't give people the chance to get to know the real you, which is an act in and of itself that is manipulative. At the end of the day, people pleasers
Yeah.
want to please other people and they prioritize other people's needs over their own. I don't think that comes from a place of malice. I think that it is something that is done to protect themselves and often in an attempt to protect other people. However, it robs people of the real chance to get to know people who are real. And I think
I love
everybody
that.
deserves honesty in relationships, transparency in relationships, and it's very hard to do that and to be a people pleaser. That was I got
I just
dragged
wanna say
up and down.
I first of all, I love you explaining that, and in general, that's the perfect example of I'll be honest, if I maybe heard that a decade ago, I would have thought, "Now I'm a manipulative person, and
Yeah.
I'm taking it personally," right? Versus, here take what you hear and take everything with a grain of salt, and I actually see that as, yeah, that's very true, and I've experienced that in my own life, and I can look within and say, that has both been a way of protecting myself, but that's it too. It's not one or the other. And it is hard with social media, right? Because they probably
Yeah.
just see that and don't watch the
Uh-huh.
video and they're like, I'm like, if you
And it's
listen to
fine.
him and watch the video, but
But I
you're
will
probably
say
used to getting dragged.
I've had people come to me and say that when you said that, it saved like my life. And I've even
Yeah.
had clients come to me and say, like, hey, so I saw that. It really stressed me out,
Yeah.
but I was forced to sit with my discomfort and it helped
Mhm.
me to realize like I have some things I need to work on. My goal is
Yes.
not to like rile people up just for the sake of riling people up. If one or two people are impacted by
In
it,
control.
that's
They
good
are.
enough for me. I did my job.
You said
Yeah.
one recently too that I loved about because I totally resonate with this. Something about being a good
Yes. Oh my God, they
I
were
worry about
so
being a
mad
good
at
person,
me.
but it's always the no, and it's so funny because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, that's so I love that, that's so true," and you're not saying, you're an awful person shaming, it's just recognizing, it's also not benefiting the person who's experiencing that, right?
Yes.
It's not helping us. I was deeply under the people pleasing as much as I knew I did what I knew, I was resentful and tired, and I could
Yeah.
feel it in my body, and I'd say yes to things, and I'm like, "Why did I say yes? They should have known." It's like, that's so
Yeah.
all to say, I love that you share
Yeah.
that. Do it. Even if people get
Thank
riled up, there
you.
are people who appreciate it, right?
Thank you. I will say like that one they were so mad because I'm like, "No, I'm saying like when you're obsessed with being perceived as good, like you
Yeah.
actually stop yourself from having the opportunity to
Yes,
do good because you aren't receiving feedback necessary to be a better person." Like but that was
exactly.
not heard. But most people got it, and that's what matters to me. If the
Yes.
people are getting it who need to get it, they got it, and that's all that
Yes.
matters.
The way you're like, "Do I have to make 10 more videos addressing every single part of this?"
Right. I
Oh
I've
my
gotten
god.
out of the habit of that too. Like I
No,
don't
good
need to
for
explain
you.
myself that much. Like I was like, all right, well, I said what I said. Like Hopefully,
Yeah.
these few comments will clear it up. If you don't get it, you're just not ready to receive it. And I
Yeah,
wish you the best. And I
and
hope
that's
you,
okay.
when you are ready to receive it, you can come back to it. But yeah,
I love when
okay.
other people explain it too in the comments. You're like, "Thanks for just, like, explaining for me."
It
Like, I
can
don't
be
really know how to say it,
exhausting.
and, like, it's also, like, I don't know about you, I'm like, I don't know how to describe this in just a comment, and I'm not making a full so, all to say, yep, some people get it, some people don't. That's okay, and no shame to them, right? We've all been there in our own way.
Happens to the best of us, you
Yeah,
know?
we've all been there.
Um, Okay, so our fourth segment, I got 5 segments. I
Ooh,
know it's a lot of
I
segments, but our fourth
I'm here.
our fourth
I'm
segment, it's
ready
a
to go.
quicker one. It's "What's Your Anthem?" And this is where I want you to share any song, any piece of media that has been helping you get by these, last few days, and let me know
Mm,
if you want me to go first or if you wanna go first.
no. Go ahead, since I went first last time. I'd love to hear yours.
So mine's, you know what? A nod to what we were talking about earlier. Mine is gonna be "The Climb" by Miley Cyrus. I actually really love that song, and people who've been
I
following
like
me
you
for
1,000
years,
times more. Not that I could anymore, but I'm just like, taste.
that song is just it is, like, up there for me. People who have been following me for years know I love that song because she's just it's so true. It's the climb, everybody. It's not about how fast you get there or what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb.
Just going through all the
Listen
lyrics. I love it.
listen to
It's so
Miley
true
Cyrus.
though. It's so good. No, that's a beautiful, beautiful song. I'm just obsessed with that song. That's a great one. Do you listen to it often or it's more just like is
Yes.
that a karaoke song for you or more just you listen to it?
Yes. I
Okay, I
cannot
love it even
sing at
better.
all. Like, you would probably not like me anymore if you went to karaoke with me because I sound horrible, but
I'm around enough people who like do karaoke well where I'm like, can someone just like, be a little off and
that
have a
would be
little
me.
fun respectfully? I love that.
But, yeah, I do listen to it. I have a playlist called "Songs to Heal To" on my
Ooh,
Spotify that I should add these
can you
songs
share
to
it
that
like
list. Yeah,
publicly? Okay.
it's a
It's like I don't
public
want
s
to creepishly go be like,
playlist.
"Okay,
No, no,
well,
no.
listen here."
I have to add "The Climb" now because I'm like, I listen to this song when when I need to
So
be
good.
reminded that I'm on a journey, okay? Shouts out to the journey.
You're on a damn journey. I love that. I love that. And that's also a reminder. I'm like, I want to make a playlist and share it, but I feel like I have like the same few. I get like hyper fixated on a few songs, but I will say, I don't want to interrupt. Did you
No,
have another part of this answer? No, no, you good? Okay. For me, my go-to song is "That's the Way It Is" by Celine Dion. Do you know that
I love me
song?
some Celine I
I
love
love
me some Celine
I
Dion.
love Celine, and that's a song that, like, has got me through some panic attacks, like, I was in a canyon one time where I couldn't pull over, and I just played that song on repeat, but it's kinda
Oh,
similar to The Climb, it's like, that's the way it is, and not, like, in a toxic positivity way, right? But, like, life's gonna be hard, shit's gonna
yeah.
happen, very much the acceptance of it, but, like, you're gonna feel it, you're gonna get through it, it's gonna happen again, all the things, and just so good. Also banger for karaoke as well, but, like, every time I try that for karaoke, I'm like, "Girl, why did I" just, like, doing a Celine Dion for karaoke is just, like, trying to do the Olympics. It's just not fair to anyone.
She's a vocal powerhouse. It's just like,
She
yeah, it's
is.
really yeah.
You wanna hear a little
It's so
fun fact
what's up?
real quick? Is I love Celine Dion, dream of mine to have seen her in Vegas, and my mom for my birthday's January of 2020, got me tickets for April 2020. And they're like, "Oh, we're
Oh
gonna put" and then after that, she stopped, like, kinda singing for now, and it's like, "Oh, we can't wait to go." And then they're like, "Okay, we have to pause it and push it off a little bit." And then it just got pushed off, like,
no.
never happening. It's all good. I've been to concerts, nothing to complain about, but it was just like, you went in that moment in 2020 where you're like, "Yeah, it'll be a 2 weeks push off," and you realize, what a time. What a time.
Child, don't get me started on my 2020 story. I was literally on the way to Italy and I was gonna go to Italy and Paris literally 2 days before the lockdown. I was like, I had the choice because they were talking about the lockdown. I was like, ooh, if I go and it's not just
Be
2 weeks,
stuck.
I'll be stranded in Paris. And then, at the time, Italy was like the epicenter. So I was like, "Oh,"
Yes.
and then I made the executive decision not to go, and thank God because lockdown was
Yeah.
definitely more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
But
Would you have did
look
you have you gone since then?
to Paris, but not Italy,
Okay.
which
You'll go.
sucks. I will make
you'll
it
be
happen.
there.
I'll
Don't worry,
pencil
I'll
it
be
in
seeing
for,
you
like,
with, like, Aperol Spritz or whatever, chilling.
in the
You'll do it.
Maldives, yeah.
Oh, yeah, hell
But yeah, oh, I'm so like now I'm like, oh, this has been such a good chat. We're coming to a close. Yeah, it's so great talking with you. Last segment is the
ooh.
toolkit. This is where we both share
Mhm,
something that helps us to get through to expand our toolkits, something that helps us to stay leveled, and something that helps us when we're having our rougher mental health moments. And I am
mhm.
curious about what is something in your toolkit so we can all expand our toolkits at the same time.
I love that. I think as someone I definitely was someone who didn't think I could feel angry or like I said, I had to just feel better or watch something feel better or do something to feel better. I really leaned into, and as someone who lives in my head a lot, be in my body. So kind of like obviously check in, but just like not having anything specific that it needs to look like. And for example, putting in headphones, this is so silly. I've said this on my podcast too. There are certain songs that just like hit you and remind you of a time. There's something about Club Can't Handle Me by Flo Rida that just like I cry. I cry when I hear that song. I feel you know what I mean? You're like, that's the last song I
Nothing,
imagined.
nothing could have prepared me for that.
I go from Celine Dion to like, I don't know how. Or like honestly, Pitbull sometimes. It's just like it takes me back to this very nostalgic time where anytime I hear Club Can't Handle Me, I legit feel like I'm in a montage of my life and I'll just dance. I'll also say like letting myself move, dance, literally like
Yeah,
shake. Like I call it like first of all, feeling my feelings, but I love to have a safe, contained adult tantrum, whatever that looks like. And sometimes it's
yes,
not even like looking extreme or anger all the time. It's letting whatever comes up come up, where I'm shaking or I'm dancing a Britney or whatever it is. And so, let a big part of it for me is really just checking in with my body. And anytime I feel like I need to figure this out or it's something urgent, I'm like, how can I confuse the hell out of my brain and just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna like dance for like 5 minutes or wash
yeah.
water on my face or whatever it is. And so really doing that has been helpful for me. And I have pups, so I just like hold on to my dogs too. Anything to ground me. I feel like it all kind of comes down to that. Yeah.
I too am good for a good flow rider moment, but I love dancing around my house like Britney Spears. Like I will do
Well,
that. You'll
Brittany,
catch me
I will do the dance.
the
I'm like
twirl. I'll be in here twirling, okay?
the Blackout album too. I'm like, you just can't not shake your
Love me
ass to
some
that.
Britney
Okay.
down, okay? I'm a
You're
circus type
literally
of person. I love like her circus
love.
era, but like I
So
love
good.
Britney. Shouts out to Britney Spears. You're not listening to this,
That's
but
a
you should
Brittany.
be.
My first album of all time. Maybe one more time. Thank you for the vibes. You're like, you're not listening to it. You never know.
My contribution to the toolkit this week is going to be the anger iceberg. Love the. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yes,
the
I love it.
exercise, but if you're unfamiliar, please search anger iceberg exercise. It's just an exercise where you can write anger at the top and just write out all of the things underneath of that anger below. I think getting in tune with anger is super important whenever I'm having moments where I'm super pissed off or super frustrated, which has been a lot recently. My God,
Mhm.
look around. But
Yeah, literally.
having tools like that have helped me a lot when it comes to like being able to process through difficult emotions and feelings. And I think everybody should have an anger iceberg on
Yeah,
go. I loved using that tool when I worked with kids in foster care because it really helps like
great.
kids understand. And it's just because I can use it, but kids don't mean adults can't use it. But it's really
Yeah,
helpful for understanding anger and like how you feel getting underneath of that anger. So that is my
I love it.
contribution.
It's a great one.
Yeah. One,
It's so
Tara,
fun.
thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
Please let the people know where they can find you.
Of course, yes. So you can find me at Trust and Thrive. Trust and Thrive. I know people think it's Thrust and Thrive, which I respect. If I were a sex therapist, I'd be on that right away. No, the amount of times I'm like, Trust and Thrive. I love that. Not a sex therapist, but love that. Trust and Thrive on Instagram and TikTok. And my podcast, Trust and Thrive, is also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And you can find me there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
today.
This is so
Y'all,
fun.
thank you. Y'all,
Aw,
please like, share, Drop your Ask Dr. Durag and friends questions if you get an opportunity to do so. Rate the podcast positively. Let me try that again. Rate the podcast positively if you get an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much for being a part of this collective. And once again, you are doing so much better than you know. And thank you for joining.
Thank you.